compassion and courage, creativity and imagination, personal and spiritual growth, continually becoming your best self. Welcome to Soulful Living with Drs. Philip and Jane Montrose. Welcome to Soulful Living with us, Drs. Philip and Jane Montrose. Hello, everyone. We are the hosts of your podcast. We offer weekly strategic tips for living soulfully. We're the co-founders of IAHP, which is part of Awakenings Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating a more loving world where the unique gifts that each individual brings are honored and nurtured. And today we are talking about opening to miracles. Are you interested in miracles? I hope you are, because you're in the right place if you are. Jane, you want to go into a little bit about what we're talking about? What are miracles?
Yeah, and it might help just to start with the definition, which we have here. By definition, this is a dictionary definition. A miracle is a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency.
Yes.
And I would also say that miracles might be situations, events, or creations that exceed your expectations by a little or a lot. Or they may be wonderfully different outcomes than you're expecting in a certain situation. And I think for us, we've been fortunate having been in the field of holistic coaching and healing for a few decades now, that we've had a lot of things happen in our lives. And one of the things I would say about our lives and the work that we do, which is really fundamental to who we are, most of the biggest things that have happened, in other words, the best, most monumental, most miraculous things that have happened building our holistic practice have come out of the blue. And I just start with a simple example. In the late 1990s, we wrote a couple of books and created videos and audios that went with them. One of the books, Getting Through to Your Emotions with EFT, we're going to be talking about EFT actually today and demonstrating how you can make miracles happen with EFT. But what happened was we decided to self-publish, but then we were perplexed about how to promote our books. And it just happened at that very moment that Amazon.com came along to promote our books for us. And it was something we could never have anticipated at that time. You can imagine that was the very, very beginning. They started in a garage, I remember. And it was like, at the time, it was almost like a joke, but it was a miracle for us. And it's just one example of how things can turn out much differently than you could possibly even anticipate.
Right. I think when we're talking about what is miracles, because it's something people certainly are interested in, and most people, even a skeptic, would say, would you like a miracle? The person would say, yes, I would. We're talking about something good happening, and then we're also talking about expectations. So what do you expect? And with kind of your logical mind of what you think is possible. And of course, we know that what is possible is much greater than what we can think about. What the unknown is vast, is limitless, really. So what can come out of the unknown, what can emerge, is something where miracles come. So we're talking about expectations. Jane mentioned exceeding your expectations, or unexpected things, something unexpected happening that's really positive, or maybe sometimes they're defying physical laws. You think of miracles as something impossible to happen. So those are a few other ideas about what are miracles, just to kind of put it in perspective here, what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting, Philip was referring to, it's kind of like we have within our kind of our minds and our vision this realm of possibilities that we think we're drawing from. And interestingly, if you look at kind of the bigger picture of things, it's quite possible in many situations that that the things that would be most conducive to taking us where we want to go are outside of that range. In other words, they're in the range of miracles. So it's important. What we might want to be discussing here is how, how do we enter that range and open ourselves to that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to just mention, when we're talking about miracles, we're not talking about quick fixes that lack substance. We're talking about things that feel like like it says in the definition, the dictionary definition, that they are may be the work of a divine agency, or I would say that they are connecting you with what I would call the divine plan. So if there is a divine plan for us, and there are possibilities within it that exceed what we consider to be possible because of the reality as we know it, then, and we can open to that as a possibility, then we're in a different position. Wouldn't you say, Philip?
Oh yeah. So if you hold an open mind and an open heart, that's the key. You want to have a certain level of realism and groundedness, so you're not doing something that's going to endanger yourself or put you at risk. But at the same time, you want to open yourself up to more possibilities, because you don't know what's possible. I think they say that 98% of the visible world is invisible. The physical world is in dark matter. So what is knowable is mostly invisible, dark matter, scientists call it. And that is just a fraction of what is in infinity. So it's mind-boggling what is possible, is the point. So if there's this mind-boggling possibilities, it's good to consider that. And if you think of all the things that have happened to you in your life, and as Jane said, divine guidance, how did you meet the people you did? How did you get the things you did? And obviously what is going on inside of you, which we'll talk about, orients you and attracts you to miracles, and opens you up and puts you in the right place at the right time. So you're receptive, so a miracle doesn't happen and it's right in front of your eyes and you miss it.
Right. And that can happen. It's interesting. We've been trainers and advisors to many people over many years now, and we've seen things like that where it felt to us like there was this big opportunity right in front of a person and they couldn't see it. And
Right.
I wish I had written down some of the examples. I can't think right now where that happened to me, but I can remember several times thinking, well, gee, I almost missed that one. It's kind
Right.
of like opportunity kind of floats by you, and you have to be ready to take it.
Right.
And if you miss it, you miss it.
Yep.
And it's not the end of the world. More opportunities may come, but I think it is we want to be in the right state to be receptive and to be available.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And one of the ways that I define it is, and I think both of us, what we call the field of pure potential. So if you look at reality, like the concept of morphic fields, and Philip probably is better with the science of it, but there's the concept that we create realities. And I think it's pretty clear in the world that people are living in very different realities. We're in the same world,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of us are
Right.
actually living in the same reality. And I think that the people who are watching this or listening to this are wanting to be in a reality that has more potential in it. And the field of pure potential is one where I we we focus on connecting with the heart and the energy of love to connect with. It is a place of connectedness, which makes sense. You can connect with miracles. Just be in a place where anything is possible. In fact, the Miracle Reframe, we're going to be talking about the affirmation that goes with it is anything is possible and miracles are happening now. It's just like to be in this place and not expecting anything in particular, and not judging what happens, but just being in this place of complete openness, which feels really good too. Wouldn't you
Hmm.
say?
Oh, yeah. And it's being open to what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling. So it's on the outer world and the inner world. And if you're watching this show, the Soulful Living Show here with Philip and Jane Montrose, something we say, something that comes to mind, and that's how creativity is sparked. I'll just be reading something and there'll be a word or a sentence that will spark a very creative awareness or insight, or even an article on something just in a few words, and it's like there's something in that energetically awakens something deep within you. There's an idea that things emerge from deeper levels. So when you are aware, things just come out of, quote, the blue, out of the depths, and that divine guidance where what you couldn't perceive, what you didn't know, what you tried to figure out just is suspended. There's a still point, like the calm ocean, and in the depths, you enter the depths, the vast, limitless fields, and amazing things can appear, produce themselves.
Right. Yeah, which is so beautiful. And it, you could say that there's an element of what people call synchronicity in this too, which is
Mm-hmm.
meaningful coincidences. It's like just when you need someone to market your books, this company comes along, with a
Right.
whole new concept that has never been in the world before. And it is like that. And it can be simple things. Watching for miracles, it might really make the most sense to start with simple expectations, or simple, I guess, simple things, not like this life-changing thing that you need to completely transform your life. But what might a little miracle be? I
Mm-hmm.
remember one time and I can't remember the exact situation, but I think we all have those times when we kind of doubt whether all of this spiritual realm that we feel we live in, whether it's just in our imagination. and
Mm-hmm.
and I was on a walk. Philip must have been somewhere else. We often walk together, but I was taking a walk and near our house, and I just asked for some validation that what I imagined to be real on a spiritual level was actually real. And I didn't know exactly what to expect. I didn't have any expectation. I really almost didn't think that anything would happen. But within 30 seconds of the time when I asked that question in my mind, a huge, beautiful peacock flew across the road in front of me and landed, I guess, perched by the side of the road right next to me and looked at me. And of course, I think many people feel that birds are like a bridge between heaven and earth. And this was a beautiful one, a beautiful big peacock. I'll never forget it. And it was like, wow. And I think when you ask a question like that, and if nothing really monumental happened, don't think it's a failure either. I'm not trying to suggest even that something like that would happen. I don't know what would happen to you if you were in a situation to ask that question, but that felt like a miracle to me.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we mentioned about being open-minded and open-hearted, and people who heal from serious illnesses often have that open mind and open heart. Christian Northrup said, if you look at people who've experienced spontaneous remission, what you find is that there was a sense of self-trust that came in. So despite a diagnosis, they knew they had more power than that diagnosis. So that's another way of
Right.
defining a miracle. Something greater than what is expected occurs, and that you might call it divine guidance. You might just saying you're ready. You have the right mindset. There's that wonderful famous quote about luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Seneca said a long time ago. So if you keep on being ready, some amazing things can happen. If you keep on following your heart, pursuing your interest, your purpose, living fully, some amazing things will happen. You'll attract. If you're interested in people, guess what? People will be interested in you. if you follow things that you're good at, guess what? You'll do more of things that you're good at, and that will attract things that you're interested in. So it builds on each other, not every moment, every day. Jane and I have told the story where we got some Google ads kind of out of the blue, quite a bit, a large grant of them, because we've been in this business of nonprofit coaching and healing for decades now. So if you keep doing that, some miraculous things will come your way, seemingly, out of the blue. And
Right.
because you were ready, you were the luck happening when you're prepared, meeting that opportunity.
Right. Right. And really, I think as Philip suggested, if we judge things, like if you say, well, I'm waiting for a miracle, I want a miracle, I'm looking for a miracle, I don't see a miracle, and you say, well, this doesn't work, it really is, it's self-defeating. You have to be open to whatever is, in divine order for you. But I think another validation, or another quote that I really love is Albert Einstein, who said, there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle.
Right.
And it is also interesting. Philip was talking about physical disease. It's interesting that sometimes, I think probably most people have heard that people like cancer survivors might say, well, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And you might think, well, how can a person say that? Of course, you haven't been in that position. But there is meaning to things that we can't understand unless we're in a place of pure potential and really openness to learning and growing too. I do want to just mention quickly, Julie Kiss said hi to us from New York, so I want to
Hi,
acknowledge
Julie.
you, say hi, and thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's such an amazing topic, and if you start with that assumption that everything is a miracle, and maybe reflect also on the things that have happened in your life, maybe they didn't seem good at the time. We judge things too in ways that are maybe counterproductive to our growth and well-being. When I look back at my life, there's probably nothing that I would change, because I know that everything has been in divine order, and those things that I judged as being maybe tragic or bad in my life didn't necessarily turn out that way.
Right.
And we need growth. We're in actually we're in a big growth period right now as a world. The whole world is.
Yeah, the song "It's Going to Take a Miracle." Sometimes we get a miracle.
Right. Right.
Something coming out of the blue, something greater than expected, something that sometimes even seems to define physical laws at times, things that can happen. And if you look at history, things that were, years ago, if you said 100, 200 years ago that people would be able to fly in the air, they'd think that's impossible, So is that a miracle? I don't know. Is that a scientific breakthrough? Is our innovations, miracles coming something from a higher level, or a new creative combination and innovation?
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And you can put them all together too. It might not, like flying may not be a miracle per se, but the way that someone came to, be able to invent flying may have been a miracle. There may have been a miracle involved.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like when those miraculous perceptions come to mind, or discoveries, and you think, wow, that's amazing. I never would have thought of that before. And all of a sudden something comes to you out of the blue that really changes your life.
Right.
Another thing that happened for us, we have a fairly large organization with Awakenings Institute. And so many things that have come together over the years that you'd almost think like that we had a huge plan with it, because we have been able to create a whole range of different possibilities for people to learn healing techniques, and we have an ordination program for people who want to become spiritual leaders and and joined the ministry, and just so many different things.
Non-denominational.
Right, non-denominational. And it didn't all, it wasn't like there was a huge plan. It was one thing led to another. With the books that we wrote in the 90s, then we wrote a couple other books and created kind of programs around them. One was on intuition, one was on life purpose, that I, specifically, and then of course EFT, healing, spiritual kinesiology, another healing system. And so we developed those, and then around, I guess, 2004 or so, we thought, well, gee, those would make wonderful home study courses. So we started developing home study courses that were available on the internet. That's another thing, that it just was the right time for it. And there we had all of these materials that we could just put into those courses. And it's been such a blessing for us, and so many people who have been able to learn and grow from them.
Mm-hmm.
But when we started developing them, we couldn't have imagined that was even possible, because it actually wasn't.
Yeah.
when we did that.
Previously, it wasn't. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we've been kind of on the leading edge of technology in a lot of ways too, in ways that we didn't even know. Well, the fact that then Zoom came along.
Right.
And we've been teaching a 1-year program since the 90s, probably for 25 years. And when Zoom came along, that was a wonderful way that we were already offering actually the program online, but for Zoom to come along, then all of a sudden we could actually all see each other. And it would be so much more like all being together in a single room.
Which is kind of miraculous in itself.
Right. It's pretty amazing that can be done. So
this all comes under the heading of luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, which
right.
could be a definition of miracles in a way. Like, wow, when the timing is right, when everything comes together, this sort of magical elixir, something's produced, something emerges from the presence and collective energies and awareness and openness.
Right. And again, just the determining factor, the way that I see it, if you want to make it really simple, because we want people to be able to do this, is if you feel like you're more in a state of connectedness, like connectedness with everyone and everything, which is what love is, or if you're feeling separate and alone and constricted. Connectedness is expansive. Fear, separation, competition, all of those things they constrict your energy. So you want to be in that expansive place and not judge things as good and bad, but
Mm-hmm.
watch out for opportunities and take them when they come.
Mm-hmm. Right. So should we start turning to the Miracle Reframe demonstration, Jane, and what that's all about?
Yeah, and I think this is a really perfect time for us. We decided that we would demonstrate this healing technique with EFT, the emotional freedom techniques. We have an approach we call holistic EFT, which is slightly different from the typical EFT, and you'll see, and the Miracle Reframe is part of holistic EFT. Anyhow, we talked about it this week, how we would present it, and we decided that we would present it with something like Philip and we would each come up with something that was disturbing us now to use as an example. And anyone, if you're watching this or listening to this, you can follow along with us and do it also.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we didn't know when we decided to do this, which is particularly relevant, is I found out on Friday, and it was actually Friday later in the day, after businesses and doctors' offices and things were closed.
2 days ago.
Yeah, 2 days ago, that I'd been exposed to the coronavirus. So I needed to go into quarantine, and I've been dealing with some things that have come up for me because of that, and I think Philip has too. So that feels synchronous too, that we kind of planned this and then this thing happened, and it's relevant because so many of us are affected by what's happening with coronavirus, with with the Black Lives Matter, with so many things, you know, accepting people for who they are. It brings up a lot in us, you know, that needs to be healed. And it's not that there's something wrong. It's actually that something is right, that it's an opportunity for us to let go of some of the pain that we're holding.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more we can do that, the more we can just be ourselves and actually more open to miracles, more open to pure potential in our lives. So did you have any general thoughts you wanted to add before we go into the process?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the way that EFT, the emotional freedom techniques, work is you start by coming up with generally an emotion or emotions that you want to address, and you want to be as specific as you can. In other words, you don't want to say, well, I don't want to get rid of fear. That's big. You want fear of something, like it might be fear of spiders, or, you know, fear of annihilation in the pandemic. That's a big thing, but it is just a single fear, whatever that happens to be. So the first thing that Philip and I are going to do is we're both going to come up with something. And I can start because of what has been occurring with me, with being exposed to the coronavirus and having to go into not isolation. What is it? It's
Quarantine.
Quarantine. I'm in quarantine. It has evoked a couple things. Anger, I think anger about being in the situation, and sadness, because it's made me more aware of how, you know, by experiencing it myself on a certain level, of how sad it is that so many people's lives are being impacted by this. And also it just happened also, I was in communication on Friday with a fellow who just sounded so wonderful, who was interested in the ministry, who said he had to delay because his father had died of coronavirus and he was going to his funeral. So there is, you know, I think I'd like to address the sadness. And when I start thinking about that, what we do is measure it between 1 and 10, or 0 and 10, but there's obviously something there. So I would say it's about a 7 for me out of 10. And what we're doing is measuring before and after. This is something the rational mind can really benefit from, having something to measure. So Philip, what are you considering for the Miracle
Well, I think I'm
Reframe?
going to do something on our coaching and healing course. We've had some technical
Oh, the
challenges,
technical challenges.
which is very
That's been happening at the same time.
frustrating is
Yeah.
the key emotion. It's quite frustrating. It's about a 6 out of 10. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you're following along, you might want to pick out something that you can address and measure. You said a 6?
I'd say 6. Yeah.
Right. And another interesting thing is, where do you feel it in your body? Do you notice where that frustration is?
Seems to be around my throat, so I guess it's an expression thing. It's cutting off my expression, apparently.
Mm-hmm. And for me, the sadness, I feel it in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's just another connection. It's interesting to note that. And then it's another thing that you can observe before and after. So you decide on something, you measure it, and then you're ready to do EFT. And EFT happens in rounds. So what we're going to do is one round, and then we're going to revisit where we are and see if anything has changed.
Right.
And it starts with the repetition of an affirmation 3 times. So it would be something like, even though I have this blank, I know that anything is possible and miracles are happening now. So in my case, I'll say, even though I have this sadness, I know that anything is possible and miracles are happening now. And Philip will say, even though I have this frustration, I know that anything is possible and miracles are happening now. So we'll start, and you ready, Philip? We'll start by tapping on the side of the hand, the outside there, continuously while we repeat this aloud 3 times with conviction. So you ready, Philip?
Yes.
Even though I
Even though
have this
for
sadness,
frustration,
I know that
not
anything is possible and miracles are happening now. Even though I feel this sadness, I know that anything is possible and miracles are happening now. Even though I feel this sadness, I know that anything is possible and miracles are happening now. Then you tap, we're going to give you a series of points. You tap with a couple fingers lightly, you don't have to hurt yourself, starting at the top of your head.
Or touch, tap or touch.
And you tap maybe 5 or 10 times. And you're focusing on whatever your experiences is. So I'm focusing on sadness here. The inside of the eyebrow, the outside of the eye, right around where the bone is there. Below the eye, sadness.
Frustration.
Below the nose.
Frustration.
In the chin, right in the crease there. Then right where your collarbones are, towards the underside of the inner there. And you may feel yourself taking a big breath here and there. That's a little release. And then you're kind of hugging yourself and tapping on the side. You can also identify the points because they're more sensitive. And then we end with something we call the reset process. So you start by tapping, and here you're tapping with your whole hand, again, very lightly, saying anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Nice big breath. And miracles are happening now. Tapping right here around your heart. Then you want to just take a couple breaths, and it's kind of like you're respatializing. The energy is shifting. And you can notice what you're experiencing now relative to where you started. So for me, I had sadness that was at a 7. Actually, I don't feel sad right now. And we'll talk about what that shift is in a moment too. In my heart, it feels like it's opening. So Philip, where's your frustration now?
It's pretty low. It's around a 2. It's like a fog, a resistance that's let up quite a bit.
And your throat?
Feels
how's relaxed. More relaxed? Good. And so would you like to do one more round, Philip? There may be others who want another round. Sure. And I can do another round too, because tapping, what the tapping does, it's kind of like an energetic overhaul of your system, and it just brings things into balance. So even if you think you're feeling good and you just tap through the points, it can actually change things in surprising ways. So we'll just do the affirmation again once. So ready, Philip? It's
yes.
Even though I have this remaining sadness, which could change, I know that anything is possible and miracles are happening now. Then we'll start tapping again.
Frustration.
Tapping on the top of the head.
Remaining frustration.
Inside of the eyebrow.
Remaining frustration.
Below the eye.
Remaining frustration.
Below
remaining frustration.
Chin.
Remaining frustration.
Collarbone.
Remaining frustration.
Side of the body.
Remaining frustration.
And then reset. Anything is possible.
It's possible. Miracles are
happening now. Another nice breath. On the reset, you're tapping on both sides. You're balancing both sides of the body too, in the head and the heart. So what are you noticing now, Philip?
Feel pretty calm, pretty still here. Things seem to have settled. Doesn't seem to be, an agitating subject anymore. It just is what it is, and it will work out. Funny, you get to the sort of what you knew before, but you actually feel it and believe it this time.
Right,
That's a miracle.
right. So if you reflect on what you feel now related to the technical challenges and related in, compared to the frustration you were feeling before, what is there a message in this for you? Because the positive thing in the end is the insights that come from it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say about that?
Well, I'd say it's just to be patient and to let things play themselves out, and you are doing what you can, and just be patient and don't rush things, and just allow things to work themselves out.
Mm-hmm. And as holistic life coaches, this is the way we coach people. They actually end up coaching themselves.
Right, right,
We
exactly.
do offer insights ourselves, but
Facilitators.
really, if you look at the truth, it's the concept the truth lies within,
Mm-hmm.
which is really true, that you want to encourage people to connect with their own wisdom, which really
Mm-hmm.
comes forth, when whatever it is that's blocking it is removed.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, on the sadness, I have to just reflect for a moment what my heart says about that, the insight. Um, the thing that comes to mind, which I'll have to reflect on a little bit, um, for myself, is be still, beloved. It's all in the name of love
Mm-hmm.
that we're going through this, to
Right.
open to love, I believe.
Yeah, it's showing
That
us
would
how
be
to
what
be
I'm,
more loving and compassionate. Yeah,
right.
slowing down.
Mm-hmm. And part of it is compassion. I think that was something I noticed today. I was lying outside in the sun, which I think is really good for really good for you. And I figured if I might, if I've been exposed to the coronavirus, I want to do the best I can for my health right now.
Yeah, vitamin D.
Um, and I was just reflecting, and I was feeling sad. Some tears came to my eyes. Just with understanding the suffering that so many people are going through right now with the many things. There's the virus and all of the
Mm-hmm.
the things that are coming up with racial inequality, and um, people not loving other people. Really, it's interesting that, it makes sense that that would be the message, that um, sometimes I feel, for me, the reason this may be happening is so that I do get a deeper sense of what this is about. It's a little different when it hits home.
Right.
And I think you would say that too, wouldn't you, Philip? Even though you're not the one
Sure.
who was exposed, but I think both of
Right.
us were a little bit startled by it.
Right.
Yeah.
It changes you. Then you really have to change, um, because of the circumstances when they're personally affecting you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and I do feel blessed because, right now, at least, I'm feeling fine, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful. I'm looking for a positive outcome, and I think that's another thing with miracles, is expecting positive outcomes to challenges,
Mm-hmm.
not get wallowing down and saying, well, the whole world is falling apart,
Mm-hmm.
when it's to me, it's much more proactive to validate in my reality. We're talking about those morphic fields again. In my reality, things are actually coming together.
Right. Right.
So I guess that was pretty much it for.
Right. Yeah, I think we're just about at a conclusion. I'll just kind of make a little side note because people might be interested, made me think of it. And we have a course on spiritual kinesiology, another healing modality from the soul, like EFT. It's quite powerful and effective. And we did a video demonstrations, which we have on our course, spiritual kinesiology certification, a home study, like we have one for EFT as well. And one of the demos Jane did is with a lady who was very sick at the time while she was doing one of the processes. And it turned out she had COVID-19. I mean, she was coughing and wheezing, and she said she had been that way for several days, and she was feeling one of the worst she ever did. It's like she couldn't kick it. And She could
She
hardly
looked terrible
looked
on the
terrible.
video.
She looked pale. She was could hardly speak. She was coughing, hoarse, and it's. And by the end of the process, it was a little bit longer process and a deeper process than what we were doing today with the Miracle Reframe. She had actually recovered quite a bit right in that video demonstration, and shortly afterwards, she recovered from the COVID-19. Fortunately, which she had a real serious bout of it, and she attributes in part this process, this reframing and anchoring, this soul centering. We call it spiritual kinesiology. And if you want to know more about that spiritual kinesiology in that course, you can find it at tinyurl.com/sk course, tinyurl.com/sk course, if you want to pursue that. So I just that reminded me that was a miracle. I thought just
Mm-hmm. It was, yeah, and a wonderful opportunity to be able to help someone too is a
right.
wonderful opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's also worth noting with the Miracle Reframe, we've had some very positive reports from other people, and our experiences with it have been very positive. I've been surprised when we first started doing this, which was many years ago now.
Decades
Right.
ago.
Yeah, that I thought at first, well, this is probably good with spiritual things, but not so much physical things. And then experimenting with it more with myself and seeing also how it worked with other people, I realized, well, it actually is quite effective even with physical ailments. And I think it's because of the vibration of the Miracle Reframe. Anything is possible, and miracles are happening now. The vibration is pretty high. In fact, you can even just, if you're sitting around and feeling a little low, just say it to yourself, and preferably aloud, but it doesn't have to be aloud. Anything is possible and miracles are happening now. If you say it a few times, when I do that, I can't help but smile when I do that. I feel it just really lifts my spirits. So it's something to explore. I remember one time a while back, there was a fellow he was at one of our live demonstrations where we demonstrated the Miracle Reframe. And he wrote us an email probably a year later. And he said, I've been using it ever since, and my life is completely transformed by this, just from doing the Miracle Reframe.
Mm-hmm.
That made me feel really happy to know that he'd been able to do that. And this was just somebody who observed the demonstration that we did, kind of like what we just
Right.
did now. So who knows what might be possible, right?
Right.
If you don't try it, you'll never find out.
Right. Exactly. You never know
Yeah.
until you try.
Yeah. Well, I think I was feeling fairly good when we started. I think I
Yep.
feel better. The miracle,
Right.
And the tapping, just tapping the EFT points is really powerful.
Right.
So it all works.
It does. It really does. So anything else, Jane, before we close here?
No, I think that was it. Just
So this
also
is,
wishing everyone well
yes,
in
we
the
do.
situation that we're in.
Yes. And this has been the Soulful Living Show with Doctors Philip and Jane Montrose. That's us. Please share this video, this Facebook video with others. We appreciate that. And we are here every week, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time on the Facebook page Soul of Success, IHP. And we are a
It's
nonprofit.
facebook.com/soul of success.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we really value your support and tuition for our courses and other purchases, support our mission of helping to create a more loving world. And we wish you to have a wonderful week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. It's been wonderful being with you.